trying to do for real, for real. Cosmic psychedelic funk is what I came to do. Yep. Hi. I'm so by funky. Hey. So by funky. Hi. I'm so by cosmic soul. Hey.
Hey there, everybody. What's going on? You are in for a treat, like you are every time that you tune into the Authors Authority Lounge, which is the official TV show for authors. I'm Takara Nicole. To my left here,
I am Alan T. Black. I'm one of the co-hosts for this fabulous show. We're excited to have this amazing young lady here who's going to share her story and her journey. So, Lady T, let's rock and roll.
let's do it. So none other than Danielle Thompson is here in the studio with us. I won't spare you the details of how we even just cross paths, which I totally think is God in so many ways. But she's here to talk about her book and her story. So let's dig in. Welcome to the show.
Hi,
We're excited to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the name of your book, and then we'll dig in from there.
The inception of the name?
Yeah.
Okay, so Little Girl Lost, Grown Woman Found is basically my journey of discovery. I call it a journey of life. And so the book is very near and dear to my heart. It's my story of some of the challenging things that I've experienced in life. So I wrote the book as a journey, and so instead of a table of contents, there is a roadmap. And so, and phases of life. So the first phase is pain and abuse. That talks about me being sexually abused from the age of 5 to the age of 13 by 4 different men. And then some other painful things that happened during that time. And then the second phase is the emotional roller coaster, and that's me trying to figure out life after the abused. Hate to say it, but very sexualized at a young age, and so making a lot of dumb decisions as it relates to boys and men as I kind of tried to figure out life after the abuse, like confusing sex with love, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Having children very young, dropping out of school, just very confused about who I was and why I was even here. So that's the emotional roller coaster. And then the third phase is spiritual cleansing. And that's when I met Christ, and he kind of helped me pick up the pieces of the brokenness.
Danielle, when did you start the process of saying, I want to write a book to kind of document my journey? Where did that process start?
So I believe it was, so I never talked about my abuse because several girls in my family had told about their abuse and nobody believed them. And so it was a whole, you know, if it's my man, I'm going to protect him.
Right.
And everybody else calls me stupid. But
Right.
then when it happens to a niece, then I call that sister stupid. But that sister protects her child. And so I saw that too much. And so I just kind of held it in, and I really didn't talk about it. I had a couple instances where I talked about the abuse. I had someone who I was in a relationship with when I was about 17, and first confided in him, and then he used it against me.
Yeah.
And so I locked down even harder. I had about 2 cousins who knew about the abuse, but outside of that, he was the only other person. And then I met my now husband, Sean, and it was different. And so I did share again. I probably was about 25 at that time. And when I was 26, I ended up going to a church, and I met my now father, adopted father, and he counseled me. And so somehow my story got out. I think I shared at a women's retreat or something. And one of the women's president asked me to teach a lesson at women's ministry. And I didn't know too much about the Bible at that time, but I chose Tamar, the daughter of David.
Wow.
And I did the lesson as like a parallel between my life and her life, and how you can come out of desolation, because in that scripture, it talks about Tamar remained in her brother Absalom's house, a desolate woman. And so I realized that I had been desolate for a lot of years, and I didn't really want that anymore. And so I did that lesson, And then this lady, she was like 80 years old, she came up to me and she said, "You are so courageous." And I didn't know it was that at the time. I was actually quite physically ill because I'd never spoken in front of a crowd before. So it was difficult.
Yeah.
And so she said, "This is the first time this is actually coming out of my mouth. It happened to me too."
Yes.
And
Yes.
so
Yes.
she said that she felt free, and she told me that God was using me
Yes.
to free women. And so everybody kept saying, "You should write a book, you should write a book." And I didn't know anything about writing at that time. I think I had just started my associate's degree because I was a high school dropout. So I was just starting my associate's degree. I didn't know anything about writing, but I did know that I had written poetry in secret like all my life.
Really?
Since I wrote. Like that's how I got rid of some of the pain, was writing.
Yeah.
And so when I was praying about it and me and my husband were talking about it, I didn't know what to do, but I did feel like God was calling me to write a book.
Yeah.
And so eventually he gave me the vision of compiling some of the journals that I had over the years and the poetry that I had written. And so I took that poetry and compiled it into a book.
Wow.
There's so much I want to say, but the first thing I'll say is thank you for being courageous. A lot of times when we go through things like that, we feel ashamed, we feel all these emotions, and so we hide it. And the fact that Jesus was like, "Listen, nah, we need for you to step on out here." And there's nothing like being able to say "me too" and being able to feel comfortable saying that.
Yeah.
And so what you've done is really created a platform for yourself to really help embrace people, especially young girls who are going through that. And a lot of times they normalize it. They think that it's normal. They think it's okay. And when family doesn't support and come through and say, "No, this is what we need to do," and stand up for them, it can go down a trajectory that we didn't anticipate, but it's the hurt and the pain. So what would you say to someone that, or a young girl, or even a young man who has been sexually abused and they're feeling like no one's gonna hear me, there's no help, there's no hope for me? What would you say to them?
I would say there's a time and a place for everything. You know what I mean?
sure.
I believe that before I talked about my abuse, it really wasn't the time because there were some things that God needed to do in me.
Yeah.
And I talk about often how during that time I didn't believe in him, right? Because my family wasn't religious at all. I had one aunt in Hopkins Park that we would go to in the summer. And she was the only person out of 11 kids that, well, I wouldn't say believed in God, but practiced a faith.
Yeah.
Right. And so I can remember being 8, 9 years old. Another element besides the sexual abuse was physical abuse.
Yes.
And so I'll spare you all that story, but it was very prevalent in our household. And because me and my older sister and my brother right under me did not belong to my mother's husband, there was a lot of physical abuse.
Yeah.
And so we would, be crying after a whooping, and we would be sitting on the floor, me and my brother Donnie, and we would be talking about how God can't be real because how could he be if
All this.
all this is going on? Because we identified ourselves as innocent children. So I had to be about 9, and my brother Donnie probably was about 10, and he probably was about 8 at that time, 7 or 8. And it's just like, why do we keep going through this? We came from very poor conditions, didn't ever have all the utilities on in the house. We were picked on in school. And so what I would say is timing is everything. And so what I've learned is that God didn't allow me to go through those things, and he was right there, right? I know that now. He was right there.
Yeah.
Won't get into the conversation of men's dominion and all of that, but there's a lot of evil in this world that is not outside of God's control. But I believe I went through what I went through because God knew that I would be a testimony.
Yes.
At some point, and he knew exactly when. I didn't see that for coming because I never wanted to talk about it.
Right.
I never, ever, ever. I wanted to live this new life and not even deal with it. But I didn't realize how prevalent it was in every decision that I made.
So as you began to write the book, how difficult was it? And when you finished, what did you learn about yourself?
Man, That's a question.
Is that a whole show? That's a whole nother show?
Okay, where do I start? You said as I began to write the book, what did I learn about myself?
Yes.
Oh, Lord. I learned that my words had power.
Yeah.
Like
There you go.
that's the first thing that I learned.
Yeah.
And I learned the power of a testimony, right? Being believed was the biggest thing for me, but is now the least important thing to me, right?
Wow, what
And
a
so,
transition.
Yeah, some things that you that guides every waking decision can be so unimportant that I mean, it's almost funny. It's like almost comical. And so I learned that that even what I went through was not about me. It was about other people, women, and like you said, I mean, girls, and like you said, boys as well, are suffering in the silence. And so it's ironic that you mentioned the Me Too movement, because I wrote this book in 2014, which preceded the Me Too movement. And so when I wrote this book, a lot of people weren't talking about sexual abuse. And so it led to opportunities like this where I never wanted to talk.
Yeah.
But now all people want me to do is talk.
Yeah.
And so I learned that I could do things that I never imagined doing, right? And so I wrote the book, and of course my dad was promoting the book. He's a pastor in Minnesota, and so all of his friends were promoting the book. And they wanted me to come and speak to their congregations, and I'm like, for what?
Ooh.
So
Right.
they were like, about your testimony, I wrote a book. You have the book. Like, it's in there. Like, why do I have
enough.
to talk about it?
Right.
Like, I didn't want to talk about it. And then so I was very terrified. And then God just took it away. He took the terror away. And so I ended up speaking at not only churches, but schools and colleges, high schools, grade schools, county jails, juvenile detention centers, and just seeing the effect that what I went through had on other people, and how it gave them a voice when they didn't feel that they had one.
Yeah.
It was just rewarding, because I once too felt like I didn't have a voice.
So almost in a way, God has transitioned you into becoming a voice for the voiceless. Is that fair to say?
I really don't like the spotlight, but yeah, if you say so.
Well, and Danielle, I say that because God sometimes moves us into a position we may not feel qualified for,
Yes,
but he qualifies us for that position. That's why I'm saying that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
This is woo. I'm so proud of you. And
Thank you.
I say that because I run across women all the time that are so terrified to tell their story, because they're scared of what people are going to say, what people are going to think. And I'm like, people need to hear your voice, because some people will relate to your voice more than they will an
true.
Oprah or a Vivica Fox
true.
or some, like, your voice can speak to somebody's healing pathway. And so the fact that you are in this place and there's so many things that you're doing, what do you think is next for you when it comes to sharing your story?
In terms of my story, I feel like I'm on a different path right now. At one point, this was it. This was all I had to offer. But God's elevation is kind of tricky.
Yes.
I've learned that.
Yes.
Just as I didn't see myself speaking about my sexual abuse to anybody, let alone strangers and groups of people.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I didn't understand about my path, and it's something about discovering purpose.
Yes.
And we have a purpose conference coming up in August. Let me
There you
just
go.
plug that.
There you go.
But I think that's the next phase of my journey, just helping other people along that way. Outside of that came, me going back to school, learning more, doing more. And I was kind of drawn to trauma.
Yeah.
And that's like my niche. Like, I love helping people uncover, process, figure out their trauma, right? And so, like, I was going to school, but I was just going for whatever.
Yeah.
So high school dropout, right? Went back, got an associate's degree in liberal arts, and then I got my bachelor's in criminal justice, and now I have my master's in co-occurring disorders for mental health and drug addiction. And so full circle moment for me was like my mom's alcohol addiction, just really wanting to understand that, and understand why she seemingly chose the substance over us. But then God brought me to the disease model of alcohol addiction and how it rewires the brain, and there's a real lack of control. So now with my clients, I work with them and I counsel them on understanding their trauma and understanding, you know, worldview and all these things, how we become who we are.
Yeah.
Especially if we're not connected and don't understand how that process works. And so a lot of us, and I was just talking about this yesterday, a lot of us have PTSD and don't know it. You know what I mean? And so it guides us in decision making. It guides us and it leads us to a place. And if we don't understand and we're not educated about it, then we'll just kind of exist like we tend to do as Black folk. But there's a process to where you can understand that and you can turn things around. I always say that with my mom, and I love my mom, she had a trauma that affected her in a major way. Right. And I learned more about this as I got older. I didn't understand it when I was young, and I knew that her sister had died, but I didn't know the way her sister died, and I didn't know the guilt that my mom carried because of how she died. And so as I got older and I started to explore this disease model of addiction, it suddenly made sense. You know what I mean? That her coping mechanism was the alcohol. You know? Yes, she loved us. She had 5 kids. She loved us. I can remember a time where she wasn't an alcoholic, and I remember the care that she put into us. And even when she was sober, she did her best. You know what I mean? But the trauma that she suffered was so heavy, and when it's so weighty on her, that she needed to check out a little bit. And when she did, she didn't realize that she was slipping into addiction. So I think that's the key. You know, we have a lot of substances in our communities, and addiction sneaks up on you.
It does.
And I don't think enough people realizes that.
So it sounds like your book really took you through a couple of different journeys. One would be like the birthing process. The other one is the awakening of even just your greatness. And you said something that we talk about this all the time, where people don't realize how journaling and poetry is a way to release. Sometimes when we can't or don't know who can be that safe place, we turn to writing. So when did you realize that that was like the best coping mechanism for you? Or did you even realize it was a coping mechanism, or you just are just like, this is my safe place, is just writing?
Years and years and years later, it was just what I did. Like, I couldn't talk to anybody about it. So I would just write my feelings down. And I had this pink journal, I still have it. And it's pink, and it says, Danny's private thoughts, do not touch or else. Like, nobody even knew I wrote poetry. Nobody even knew. And so it was years and years later.
So even through the poetry, because I think sometimes it's hard to go back and look at who you were, because there's the pain and there's, like you said, the PTSD type of impact. Are you able to go back and look at the poetry now and say, hey, I've come a long way. I'm now at a point where I can see what happened. I may not necessarily agree with it, but I know it was for a reason. Have you reached that point?
Yes, God has revealed so much to me about all of this. Like, and it's crazy how it happens, right? God has revealed a lot. There's one of my cousins, a first cousin, is one of my abusers. And understanding, there's a poem in here, generational curses or learned behavior. And so that process was so revealing, and it's a long story, but the gist of it is that I, at one point, thought I was the only one being sexually abused. And then when I found out that other cousins were and that my sister was, I thought it was just our family. I thought our family was cursed. I thought that, you know what I mean? Like, nobody outside of my family is dealing with this. Something's wrong with my family. And then I didn't realize until years later that this was a common thing that was happening. And so with my cousin, it was like he had a situation that wasn't revealed to me until after I had started speaking about my stuff. And I guess, I don't know, some people would say that, you know, you shouldn't let people off the hook. But when I found out his situation, even that made sense, right? And so I think that we as Black people, we always say, you know, it's just a generational curse. When in reality, it's a learned behavior.
Learned
Yes.
behavior. Yeah.
It's like passed down and passed down. And until somebody is the voice in, you know, let me say this. Sexual predators are weaponized by silence, right? And so the thing is, they continue to operate under this veil of secrecy because threats, fear, shame that's directed inward instead of being placed properly. And so I think that we have to be able to help people find their voice in a way that helps them share their story.
Yes.
Because when we do, it's not passed down.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And when kids get the help that they need, they don't become a perpetrator in a way that they were perpetrated.
For sure.
So you have come so far, and Danielle and I met probably about 6-7 years ago.
Yeah.
I got a chance to hear part of her story, and I was just blown away. So I've always considered you to be an amazing woman of God. I just wanted you to know that. Where you are now, where God has taken you, is to a high place. But what's next on the horizon for you?
I don't know.
Next, hold on.
Oh, so right now I graduated. I got my master's in 2022. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And it was a time in my life that I really don't care to revisit other than to figure out, you know, how do I do better in the future. But I prioritized a job over being licensed. God told me years ago that I was supposed to be a licensed therapist. And there was a lot of things going on with that job that I prioritized it over what God told me. And I suffered the consequences greatly.
As we all have.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I closed that degree without licensure. And then I, you know, went on trying to figure it out after I left the job. And I was going to get my 4th degree, my doctoral degree in counseling so that I could be licensed because I had blown that chance for that job. And so God is amazing though, because he showed me a program. I went to UNO's website. I was going to apply for their counseling program, and he showed me a program called Bridge. And so I started that program, and what it does is it you have to take 4 classes, and then they sign off on your internships. So now I'm finishing up my 2nd internship in the Bridge program, and I will be licensed under that previous degree as a co-occurring therapist, dually licensed in mental health and addictions. So that's where I am now.
Okay.
What's next? I hope in the near future. Me and my husband were talking about this, but my goal was to get my doctoral degree before I was 50. That ain't gonna happen. Because I'm almost 50, but so I upped that to 55 because I have to get licensed and I have to work under provisional licensing to get fully licensed. And so that's about probably another 3 years. And so after that, it looks like a doctoral degree in theology.
Okay.
And I feel like that completes my educational journey because I got a little bit in every area. But what type of woman of God would I be without learning as much as possible about
That's true.
God?
So we're down about 2 minutes or so. So Danielle, share with the audience, where can they get your book? How do they get in contact with you? Because I'm just going to say it. I may be putting you on the spot, but I'm not going to apologize. I know for a fact if you've been speaking here or regionally,
Yeah,
you're going international
For sure.
because of who you are and what you've accomplished.
absolutely.
So how do they reach you? We're just going to say Dr. D.
You can't say stuff like that, Sir Allen.
But I say that, you know me, I say that because the greatness that is inside of you
Yeah.
is still being birthed, but it's apparent to everybody who sees you because you have that vibe and that glow. It's going to happen.
Well, praise God. I'll say this, all glory to God. Like I try to be as less, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. I got to get used to that.
Yes.
But anyway, so
Give us your website and your contact
my book
information.
is on Amazon.
Okay, hold your book up.
It is Little Girl Lost, Grown Woman Found. And the little subtitle is Walking Out of a Dark Past into a Bright Future. And so it's on Amazon. I always will pop the trunk and sell a book.
I know that's right.
Do what you got to do.
I can be reached. My
Do what
email
you gotta
address
do.
is Allean Danielle, which is my pen name, Allean Danielle 7@yahoo.com. Working on a website, working on all those things, but
That's what's next. And I'm glad you said it because I was just trying to be obedient and not like.
Hey, I'm old. I can say what I want.
Well,
now. I'm
well,
old.
I can't. I'm not there yet.
Hey,
So
one of the privilege of getting old, you just say what you want. Hey, you know what?
Yeah.
She's already amazing, so she just going
For
higher.
sure.
It's just that simple.
you definitely need to incorporate speaking
Oh yeah,
more.
yes.
There's a window for what you're doing. And it's time to, not even a window, it's like this door. As we've been talking, I see like this big, anyways, I'm not going to go there.
Scripture say the windows of heaven will open up and the blessing will
It's
start
just
pouring
major.
forth.
It's just the timing of God is
is.
really perfect for you. And this story is definitely huge. There's a lot of people that I know that are in this little bubble.
Okay, you
and
got
they're
to sign
trying
out,
to-
baby girl.
we got it.
Well, excuse me.
Yeah, he's like, stick to the countdown. Gosh, now you got me all off track. Thanks, Alan. Well, this has been an amazing show. Definitely gracious. Thank you for taking our invite. Oh, there's tons of things that you can be doing, especially being in school. And that's a wrap because Sir Alan Black said so. So we'll see you guys next time.
Old folk can do what they want.
What you trying to do for real? For real. Cosmic psychedelic funk is what I came to do.